Orlando temperature clocked in under 70 degrees for the first time this year, so the Hallmark Christmas outfits are coming in hot. Ladies out there, I am single, ready to mingle, but also jingle, ready to kringle. So kick back and relax because we have a very festive episode of the Combine on Hitting the Field Network starting right now.
Things gon' change when I really hit the field. Undefeated chance, man, you know what's the deal. Tryna find a kid, I'm in the field doing drills. Boy, you just a sucker, you ain't never keep it real. 3 rings in my hand, I'm a warrior to the max. When I hang it up, they gon' have to give me plaques. Step up in the building and I only bring the facts. When I make a highlight, they gon' replay, run it back, okay? Always locked in, I don't got time to lax. Saying he the best, he could take a lap. Batted 1,000 when you check the stats. Boy, is you ready? You ain't gotta ask.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. And today we are covering something that a rather big story happened this past weekend that I very much loved to see, but I didn't expect. And that's with WNBA Finals. The Liberty prevented a sweep, taking a W and pushing Game 4. So to talk about this whole series with me, I have the host of HTF Bets and the host of Nighttime, Ezra Hines and Maddie Glass, respectively, with me. Now, still got it on me. I'm trying to showcase my friends over here. There we go. Look at what we got over here. So, Ezra and Maddie, how are we doing today? How do you feel?
Feeling pretty good. I'm happy for the Liberty that they finally got their first win in the playoff series. This is big for them.
Yeah, I'm glad it wasn't a sweep. You know, we get more basketball. It's always a good thing. So I'm excited to see how it goes.
Oh, yeah. And just a few weeks ago, I had the Liberty in my WNBA playoff bracket taking the whole series. So I could not be more pleased as to what happened this past
They got
weekend.
a game.
But my fingers are crossed. They still need 2 more wins, one of them being in Vegas if we push Game 5, which is a tall task to say the least. But we're going to go ahead and dive into each game individually, talk about what we saw, how we think this may affect the series as a whole, and a few games going ahead if they were to play out the way we think. So starting off, Game 1 was my task to cover, and it was dominant performance just by the Aces. Playing the Aces at home in Vegas is extremely difficult. I don't know any team that could walk in and easily take home a W in Vegas. Aces win 99-82, which is absolutely ridiculous. Jackie Young and Kelsey Plum each recorded 26 points. And the Liberty was up at half, which was awesome, but they just ended up losing it. They put up 49 in the first half, which was awesome to see. But instead of putting up 98 and completely doing exactly what they did the first half, they only put up a whopping 23 points in the second half. And, just let me down. My head was in my hands that entire night. It was ridiculous. But the Aces are just a dominant team. They really, really are. But I wanted to ask both of your opinions on that game. Was there anything that stood out to you?
To me, Jackie Young was fantastic at that game. It's not like we don't expect her to step up, but she is genuinely a very, very good player for that Aces team. But if you were to ask me the top 3 bucket getters on that team, we're talking Chelsea Gray, we're talking Kelsey Plum, and we're talking Asia Wilson. So the fact that Jackie Young stepped up that much in that game alone helped them lead that comeback from halftime to end up winning the game. That was a big, big part of that game, in my opinion.
And I think a huge factor on top of that is the fact that Asia Wilson is so many people's MVPs of this league.
Should have been the MVP this year as well.
Exactly. And just that Jackie Young and Kelsey Plum were the top scorers, not even what most people would consider the MVP of the WNBA. The fact that she wasn't the highest scorer on this team, let alone second highest scorer, the team is just stacked all around. But Maddie Glass, any opinions on this first game?
I think it was around tied at halftime, and then the Aces came out in the second half and just dominated, outscored them by 20 points. So it just shows what the Aces can do. They're obviously kind of like a super team, we might say. They won last year. They're looking to do it again, but we'll talk about later. There's some factors that they might not get there this year, but it's just impressive the things that they do. They're so well coached, and the defense is amazing. The offense is incredible. So the game 1 was just really dominant for them.
It was awesome. But speaking of dominant,
game 2 was even more dominant.
Was also in Vegas. So what do you got for me on that?
So up until last night, they were undefeated in the postseason. So game 2, they won 104-76. Breanna Stewart, who was the actual MVP of the regular season, struggled. See, I put her on the graphic looking sad. She was a minus 27, shot 16% from 3, only had 13 points. And the Aces had a finals record of 38 points in the opening quarter, and that just set the tone for the entire game.
Yeah. And, I mean, I don't want to rush this through, but I do want to see a few frowns turned upside down. So, Mr. Ezra Hines, you covered Game 3.
I did.
This was the most stunning of the 3, so that have been played so far. That is. So, what do you got for me on it?
Well, we looked at a defensive masterclass from the New York Liberty in Game 3. We were talking about a 87-73 win. Not many teams hold the Aces to 73 points. That's a very, very big jump, in my opinion. But the biggest factor was Jonquel Jones this game, 1,000%. She's been eating all this entire playoff series, and she has done it again. She had 27 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, and then to add on 2 steals and 3 blocks. She was so dominant around the paint, along with Stewie. Both of them were doing well to contain A'ja Wilson. She still ended up with 16, but that's kind of low for A'ja Wilson. And if you look at the stats, as you can see on the board, well, before that,
good see on the board.
They held them to like under 40% from the field, 31% from 3. Like this was just an ugly all-around game for the Aces, and this is one they need to just write off immediately. Just try to come back in and just feel like themselves again, because they definitely weren't themselves this game, 1,000%.
So, Game 3, you have to add in the factor that playing in Vegas is so difficult. So coming back home, playing in New York, it's got to do something for that morale on the team as a whole for them to come out and pull out a W. So Game 4 is going to be played also in New York. Mm-hmm. Do we think we see the same outcome that we saw this past weekend?
I do.
I do actually,
as well. Just because the Chelsea Gray injury is so up in the air, and we don't know, and she's such an important part of that team. And I actually do have a fun fact for you. In the WNBA, teams that have gone up 2-0 in a 5-game series are undefeated. So the Liberty could make history, but it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Speaking of which, I think we can all 3 agree that they will push a Game 5.
I think it'll go to 5 as well. As an Aces fan, I do think it'll go to 5.
In Vegas, is there any chance the Liberty win this whole thing? Is there any chance?
No.
I also don't think so. I think that the Aces are just too good. Even though they're not as deep, they're just too good, and the Liberty have never been here before. So you gotta think of that a little bit.
Well, you're both wrong, because they're gonna pull it out. It's gonna be awesome. But I want to thank you for joining me on this first and amazing segment of the Combine Talking WNBA. Hopefully the Liberty pull it out and get this W, but we'll see. Only time will tell. But we will be right back talking some NFL in just a few minutes. Jack, buddy, why are you here?
I don't really understand why I'm here. I got called a delusional fan. I just don't understand why I'm delusional if I think Kirk Cousins had the best mustache in the league.
Well, Jack, buddy, I don't want to be the one to tell you this, but I don't think anybody looks cool in handlebars.
But they're back, man. They're back.
They're not. They're not. Sometimes you just got to face the hard truth. It's right there in front of you. All these people, they're calling you delusional, but sometimes you got to worry about, am I projecting? Is it me? And in this
Let me tell you something, bud. It could never be me. Anything I say is factual and truth, and that's why the Vikings are going 16-1 this year.
Organization, you have to look at your roster and say, I've had Kirk O'Thuggins for 6 years. Maybe it's time to move on.
There is no moving on from Kirk Thuggins and Justin Jefferson.
Do you think that maybe this all started just because of a little disappointment?
Nothing has started. This is how I live, and I am not delusional.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Combine. We are starting a wonderful and beautiful segment 2. And the reason it's so wonderful and beautiful is right up at the top of the set. We are talking the National Football League, and unfortunately, my Tampa Bay Buccaneers did suffer a heartbreaking loss in which we put up no touchdowns. But two major stories occurred this weekend, and I want to talk about one of them in particular. So, I should have worded that differently. But the Browns ended up defeating the Niners with P.J. Walker at starting quarterback, which is ridiculous. I couldn't believe it. But I think the biggest story of the weekend is Jalen Hurts playing like absolute dog water against the New York Jets, stinking it up. And all of a sudden, both undefeated teams that were left are now just 5-1.
Yeah,
we have no more undefeated teams left in the NFL. But Jalen Hurts had a masterclass of putting up 2 total touchdowns, 3 interceptions against the Jets defense that, although they're young, they're quick. I don't think they're good enough to pick up Jalen Hurts 3 times.
Without Sauce Gardner too.
Without Sauce Gardner, I think this was just Jalen Hurts getting in his own head, and for lack of better terms, stinking it up. He was reeking out there. And, I know Waluka Costa's punching the air right now because he's got to be so disappointed. But it was horrible. I was in the gym watching the game, and I remember going and doing single-arm dumbbell back rows. And I looked over, and my buddy goes, "Hey, yo, Jets won." I was like, "You got to be kidding me. This is ridiculous." And immediately dropped everything, pulled out my phone, went on ESPN immediately, and I was like, I can't believe this. I was in utter shock. I could not keep lifting. So I wanted to ask you, did you all have the same reactions as I did?
I was shocked. I mean, of course, everybody was surprised. I mean, the Jets aren't a very good team right now with Zach Wilson, but they've been competing. They've been a tough out, and they had a close game against the Chiefs a few weeks ago. So, I mean, but still, never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that they would have been able to beat the Eagles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, same here. I mean, Zach Wilson he looked good. He looked against, he didn't look great. But, I mean, against the Eagles defense, he looked pretty good.
I mean, the Jets defense as a whole, though, played like the Jets defense. I think the offense was just the key factor that really won in this game. Zach Wilson stinks, but he wasn't as bad as Jalen Hurts. Right. But I did want to do something a little bit different this week. We're going to be talking about the AFC North. This is a very, very close division. Not one team in this division is below 500 at the moment. The lowest record in this team is the Bengals, are sitting at 3-3 right now. But I think it's a toss-up at this point. I know the Ravens are ahead right now. They're 4-2. Steelers and Browns both sitting at 3-2 with that wonderful defeat of the San Francisco 49ers by P.J. Walker and company. That was ridiculous. Baby. But I think this is just a toss-up round table. If you got something, spill it. What are we thinking out here? Who do we think could take this right now?
I like the Ravens.
Ravens?
I think I know who.
Explain.
Well, I think they have the healthiest QB right now. I mean, Kenny Pickett almost blew out his knee the other week. They had a bye, luckily, so he's able to recover a little bit. And, I mean, for the Browns, I mean, Deshaun Watson has a shoulder contusion or whatever, or an AC contusion or something like that in his throwing shoulder. And then Joe Burrow is finally maybe reportedly healthy. They got a big win against the Seahawks. I mean, everybody won that played this week. So, I mean, maybe I could see one of the other teams, like specifically the Bengals, be able to catch up to the Ravens. I mean, they're only one game ahead, but the Ravens did get a win over them earlier in the year.
Yeah.
But I really like what the Ravens have been doing. I don't really see too much. I mean, you're going to lose some games that you think you should win, but overall, I thought that the Ravens, I've been impressed with them so far.
Yeah.
And they just got a London win, too, which is it throws it up in the air. You never know.
I think the biggest...
You don't respect London wins?
No.
They're different. They give a different challenge.
Hey, Jacksonville wins every London game.
Yeah,
every game that they're at, they win. So, I mean, there's got to be something in the water over there, Just a little bit of water.
Something with tea.
But so, I think the biggest thing with the Ravens right now is Lamar Jackson is spreading the ball out. It's not going to Mark Andrews every play. This past week, I believe he was sitting at about 4 receptions, 69 yards, which for Mark Andrews, nice. But for Mark Andrews, that's not bad, right? Mark Andrews is used to his 100-yard, 2-touchdown games, but Zay Flowers is getting fed the ball. He's trying to get it to Nelson Aguilar, OBJ, all these different targets, which don't roll your eyes. He's got a decent receiving core over there. You can't blame the man. This guy's. But the Ravens look good. Now, I personally have a little bit of a different take. And I know Jared Fox will agree with me.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and jump in. I really think the Pittsburgh Steelers can pull this one out.
No,
I really do.
I
really do. It starts with the removal of somebody from the front office, which we'll be getting into next segment. This offense, with Kenny Pickett calling audibles on the line, with him and his football mind, he's very, very good.
Yeah.
I think that offense can thrive. I really think it can. And the defense is one of the best in the league, and they have been for quite a long time.
Long time.
It's unbelievable how good this team is and how unfortunate their record is right now. 3-2 could honestly be 5-0 with a different OC.
Well, here's the thing.
With a different OC.
Would they fire their OC
with a different OC?
I know. Would they fire their OC with a winning record though?
No, they're not going
point?
to.
Okay, well then.
Well,
at what point?
but one of those wins came off a sole Randy call from Kenny Pickett on the line, without Kenny Pickett taking initiative and saying, "Listen, Canada, sit back in that chair and let me do the talking." You know.
True.
Without that, the Steelers are 2-3.
And the thing is too is that what people are not realizing is that the Steelers are 2-0 in their division.
Yep.
They beat the Ravens just last week, and they beat the Browns.
Yep.
And Kenny Pickett is the only quarterback to throw for over 200 yards against the Browns this season. Did you know that?
I did not.
No, I bet you didn't. So Kenny Pickett is still here. He's here to win the division. And the Steelers lead the league in forced fumbles. I think we have, I believe, 11 right now, which is like absurd. So we lead the league in forced fumbles. TJ Watt leads the league in sacks, tied with Daniel Hunter, but still leads with -1 game too. So don't forget that.
Indeed. But I do want to play a little bit of a devil's advocate and mention a honorable mention that I have. Cincinnati Bengals, I think, are still going to be good enough to make playoffs.
Yeah.
I really do like the Cincinnati Bengals. I know they had a slow start. I know it was a bit unfortunate. Joe Burrow had a few weird things going on. But I do think they're back. After watching these past few weeks, Jamar Chase has really gotten into the offense. They didn't even have T. Higgins, and he goes off for 3 touchdowns. What was it? Almost 200 yards.
Yeah.
It felt like Bengals Super Bowl from a few years back, right? It felt like they were back to that same era. I don't know if that can hold, but I do think that they have that potential to make playoffs this year. I do think they could make a run. I don't know if they're going to be as good as I think the Steelers could be.
Yeah.
But I do think they're going to be good. Any thoughts on that?
I think that the Bengals just aren't a September team. They always kind of start off slow, and then they just get that momentum. And Joe Burrow, this was supposed to be the week where he is fully healed from the calf injury, and it's showing. Like his throwing motion's better. He's looking better.
Yep.
You know, he's finally being able to get the ball downfield accurately. So I actually do agree, and I think the Bengals could. I think they're actually going to make the playoffs. I don't see them winning the division because obviously it's going to be the Steelers, and you can't have 2 division winners.
But I do want to hold off Pat's thoughts just real quick. I want to ask you: is there any chance the Browns can make the playoffs?
I don't really see it. Maybe if Deshaun Watson comes back and he's better than he was prior to his injury, but I don't really see it happening for the Browns. This division is loaded, and I think the Bengals they're coming. I think they're gonna be pretty good as long as Joe Burrow is healthy. That team is Super Bowl contender.
I think personally with Nick Chubb they have a much better shot.
For sure.
I know Kareem Hunt has experience in that backfield, so he looked really good yesterday. I got a few highlights of him from the game. He did look like Nick Chubb, like Kareem Hunt just last year. So I do think they have some potential. I don't know if it's playoff potential, but I could see them going at least a solid 500. Camden Mowers over there stroking his beard, asking, "Please, Tyler, just say it. Just say they make it." I don't know about that one, Chief, but I do think they'll look pretty good. But gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking NFL with me. It's always a pleasure.
It's always been a
but
pleasure.
don't go anywhere. We will be talking about a little bit more NFL when we come back for tea time. See you in a minute.
Hello there, everybody. My name is Dominic Mullen. Welcome to Hitting the Field Network. Our first show that you're going to see on YouTube is Hitting the Field Main Show, hosted by yours truly on Mondays at noon, where you'll see me with a fresh fade and fresh news. I'll also be talking a little bit of the hottest topics in sports, and we are going to be arguing mainly on there. On Tuesdays at noon, you'll see Isaiah De Anda Delgado and Ty Paton on the Combine. Just more of a podcast, laid-back style of a show. And if you're looking for the most creative segment ideas, head on over there on Tuesday. On our off day, don't forget to check out the studio vlogs on Wednesdays. Andrew Montano does a great job of giving a little bit of the behind-the-scenes look into Hitting the Field. Moving to Thursdays, speaking of Andrew Montana, him, Philip Powell, and Ezra Hines lead the way on HTF Bets. The Bets Boys always come dressed to impress, and if you're looking to win some money and catch up on the latest betting lines, that's the show for you. On Fridays, you're going to head over and see Maddie Glass and the always wrong Tyler Brownrigg on Nighttime to break down everything about college sports. If you go to UCF or are interested in UCF sports, this is the best place for you. Sorry, Tyler. Our newest show here at Hitting the Field on Saturdays is Girl Talk, hosted by Kirsten Blaylock and Lexi Zolo. The all-female hosted show tackles breaking news all across the sports world and as well reliving the history and current state of your favorite team. Check that show out Saturdays at noon. Again, I am your main show host, Dominic Moeller, and if you're enjoying this content, don't be afraid to subscribe to our Hitting the Field YouTube and check out our Instagram. But for now, that's all. I'll see you on main show. Take care.
And the festivities commence. It is tea time, baby. You know the drill. And today, our tea time is a few things coming out the rumor mill in the NFL market. And up front, I have one of my favorite Vikings fans, L. Cameron Force here. We have Tyler Brownrigg sitting right next to me. And with him is once again Jared Fox, who we've already briefly gone over a little bit of what we're talking about later. But we're going to be starting off with something coming out of the Minnesota Vikings rumor mill. Now, Justin Jefferson has been placed on the injured reserve list. He has been out for a week now, which led to Jordan Addison, KJ Osborne, among others, having relatively good games. But this does bring up the question, or it did bring up the question, that is there a potential that if the Vikings are sitting at 1-7 at the end of the 8th week when Jettis is coming back, is there potential for Kirk Cousins to be traded? Is there potential for them to start a rebuild or even tank for Caleb? Now, Kirk did come out and say, no, I'm not going anywhere. This is my home. I will continue to stink for this team. And the Vikings said, all right, we can't do anything about it. So, Tyler Brownrigg, I want to ask you, is there any chance the Vikings start a rebuild due to this Jetta's injury? Is there any chance they trade away some big names?
I think we have to do a rebuild. Because last year, 13-4, they were so great. And it was a bit of like a fluke season now as time goes on. But this team is just so bad. Like, it's not even – you don't understand. Jefferson was the only fun thing to watch on Sundays.
Hey, Jordan Addison is solid.
Yeah,
I love Jordan Addison.
He's solid. He's fine. He's whatever. He does a touchdown every once in a while, which is cool.
A touchdown.
But, dude, yesterday against the Bears, the offense was so terrible. There was nothing fun about it. And it wasn't even like the fun torture of like, oh – what wacky things are the Vikings going to do this week? No, dude. They just suck. And every time, like, they say, oh, and the ball is loose, I jump. And I am just because we're like, oh, we're going to fumble again. We lead the league in turnovers. And we're not even bad enough to get a good quarterback in the draft. So it's just, everything sucks, dude. You just can't win. Can't even lose right.
So, we need to get you back in football therapy, Tyler. But aside from how bad you are, is there any chance that any big names on this team are traded this season before the deadline?
For sure, Danielle Hunter is the guy that gets talked about a lot. Currently leading the league in sacks with 8, tied with TJ Watt. Whatever. I don't know. He's not going to be on my team anymore soon. And Harrison Smith also is a name I think could possibly get traded, though he's like a 35, 36-year-old safety. There's not much you can get for him.
Right. Yeah.
I think the Jags have been linked to Danielle, and recently I've seen stuff posts like that. So hopefully getting like at least a first or maybe even a second-round pick in return for a guy of Danielle's caliber would be ideal.
Well, I think the Vikings' ultimate goal right now should just be to stockpile as much capital as they can. Because this offseason, you need to go big or go home. Yeah. Like you're not re-signing Kirk Cousins for $40 million. You need a Caleb Williams, a Drake May, Shooter Sanders, even though it's should over in Colorado.
Yeah.
But the Vikings overall, I feel for them. They stink. They need to start this rebuild, but it's going to start with getting rid of some of these key players. Moving on, though, I want to talk about a rumor mill coming out of the desert in Arizona. The Cardinals stink, no surprise. Josh Dobbs is not that bad, but he's not too hot either.
Yeah, he's mid.
He's got a starter mentality with a backup
I wanted to choose this specifically to talk about because, look at this, 21.6 points per game with Josh Dobbs.
It's pretty impressive.
Through Murray's play, Kyler Murray's play all of last year, just the games he was in, 21.3 points per game. How do you trade a 5th-round pick for a 3rd-string quarterback, pretty much, and he puts up more points than your 1st overall pick just a few years back? I think they need to enter full rebuild again, which sucks. I'm so sorry for Arizona fans, but it's what you got to do. You have to do it. Marquise Brown is sitting there. I know his name has been on the chopping block a little bit.
Yeah.
James Conner's name has been on the chopping block, and even Kyler Murray's name's been on the chopping block. But until Murray comes off IR, until Conner comes off IR, they can't be dealt, unfortunately. But I do think we could see Marquise Brown dealt before the deadline. I think that could be an interesting story.
I agree. I think that he's either going to go to a team like Carolina or Houston, somewhere where they have a rookie quarterback that
needs some new weapons.
Needs like a wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
Marquise Brown isn't necessarily a wide receiver 1, but he's definitely a game changer that makes other receivers better. Like
he's a step up over some of the weapons in certain receiving cores around the league.
Exactly.
But I do think you can almost bet on seeing Murray and Conner shipped off this next offseason.
Really?
If they're not healthy off IR come trade deadline.
I think it would be a mistake to get rid of Kyler Murray for the Arizona Cardinals.
No, it wouldn't.
He is.
You just log more Call of Duty hours on someone else's Wi-Fi. What are you talking about?
I don't understand where all this Kyler Murray hate came from. This guy is a top 10 quarterback when healthy. He is a one-man offense.
I just showed you the stat that he puts up less points than Josh Dobbs.
Oklahoma.
Where he won the
Heisman.
There it is.
No. There's points invalid.
He's also
Boomer Sooner fan over here. I can't deal with it.
It's also going to be hard to trade because he's on a massive contract extension that he just signed recently.
Cut
but
him.
if there is
Get
a
rid of him.
team that is could try and get him, I think if the Vikings.
Minnesota.
The Vikings.
No.
I knew it was
it makes sense.
No. I'm not. I refuse to hear you out. Now, we are moving on because me and Jared have been frustrated at the mouth over this one. I am just going nuts over this. Matt Canada stinks.
I hate this guy.
He's terrible.
So
this guy is awful. I have said time and time again, Kenny Pickett is a legend in Pittsburgh right now. I love this guy. And this guy right here, on this board right here, is completely screwing up his deal. Matt Canada stinks. 15.8 points per game for an offense consisting of Kenny Pickett, Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Jalen Warren sitting at backup running back. I can go on forever, dude. There's a very stacked offense here. There's a lot of potential, and we even just talked last segment. This team could be first in the AFC North if it wasn't for this stooge sitting over here in these glasses, Mr. Cool Guy over here. He's awful. And Jared was one of the biggest Steelers fans that I know. I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts, and how quickly can they get this guy out of office?
I mean, listen, I can't say it better than what you just did right there. I mean, you did beautiful.
Thank you.
This guy stinks. He's
terrible.
I said it last week. He's the worst thing that happened to the planet Earth.
Yeah.
And he is just taking the life out of me and just it's like he's giving it to himself. Like, he wants Pittsburgh to hate him. There are billboards in Pittsburgh that say "Fire Matt Canada."
And even on that note, that one Randy call that we were talking about, Kenny Pickett's audible, you can see Matt Canada frustrated that Kenny Pickett scored off his audible, not his call.
Didn't seem to like that at all.
But real quick before we move on and get out of here, I wanted to ask, Mike Tomlin's name is being brought into question because of this, because he's siding with Canada right now. Is there any chance he's out of Pittsburgh this season?
Absolutely not. Stop dragging this man's name through the mud. It's not his fault. He does need to take some credit. Like, why is Matt Canada still there? That's kind of your fault. You kind of need to – but I get it. You need to stand up for the guys. You need to stand up for the staff that you hired. You need to stay strong with your decisions. So I get it. But when you see numbers like this, it's time to bite the bullet and get rid of this guy.
Exactly. And Mike Tomlin's had winning seasons throughout. But Matt Canada,
the guy's a loser.
He's terrible. He is a loser. Get him out of town.
The Steelers just don't fire coaches, and I don't know why.
It's the culture.
Gentlemen, I hate to be that guy, but we're out of time, baby. And I got to go hit the sanctuary and get big once more today. So I want to thank you both for coming out and joining me on this episode of T-Tom. And we'll be back next week, same time, Tuesday at noon. We'll see you then.
Bye. Clap.
Things gon' change when I really hit the field. Undefeated champs, man, you know what's the deal. Tryna find a kid, I'm in the field doing drills. Boy, you just a sucker, you ain't never keep it real. 3 rings in my hand, I'm a warrior to the max. When I hang it up, they gon' have to give me plaques. Step up in the building and I only bring the facts. When I make a highlight, they gon' replay, run it back. Okay, always locked in, now I don't got time to lax. Saying he the best, he could take a lap. Batted 1,000 when you check the